So here in segment one, we are going to revisit a little bit of what we talked about in the first episode to recap for the listeners out there. In the second segment, we are going to start solidifying what is now a top 20. We originally set out to do a top 25, but we've whittled this down to 20 now. And in the third segment, we will continue that until we get to number 11, saving the top 10 for, the rest of this season. Steve, talk to us a little bit about the process that we kind of went through in episode one.
I thought that the process was awesome. You really crafted a really cool way of being able to throw everything to the wall and allow us to really just dissect each album and figure out how we ended up with our top 10. Like when I listen, and like I've been both listening back to the top 10, like I made a playlist of all 10 albums and then just hit shuffle and just let it roll. Sometimes it's hard to hear it on shuffle, and yet each song is great. And I'm just like, oh wow, there's this from this album and this from this album, and sometimes together it doesn't really blend that well. But conceptually I'd be like, oh, it's our top 10 albums, you can just hit shuffle on it all and it'll just roll, and it's an awesome mix, that type of thing. Because I think that it actually respects the album too. It respects sequencing. It respects the overall concept for each project, as opposed to thinking of them as just individual singles and the way in which people consume music more traditionally today.
I'm big on the album. I mean, I think you know that. I think you are too. Like, don't get me wrong. I like jams. Like, I have playlists, but my preferred listening mode is very much like sitting down and listening to an album. And when I listen, that's typically how I do it, because I want to respect and appreciate the whole work. Of course, I'll isolate certain songs that I want to just, jam over and over again. But like, I really do try and sit down and listen to albums as a whole. That's very important to me.
Yeah, I think if I listen to the playlist sequentially, then it allows each album to breathe on its own and then stand on top of each other's shoulders. So
yeah, so in episode one, we started with this list of nearly 50 albums. We cut it down to what we have now is 20. Those 20 are, I'm going to read them off in no particular order: Vince Staples' Summertime '06, Kanye West, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, ScHoolboy Q, Blank Face LP, Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City, Jay-Z 444, Common's B, Lil Wayne's The Carter 3, Mac Miller's Swimming, Outkast's Stankonia, Nas's Godson, Pusha T Daytona, Ghostface Killah Supreme Clientele, Clips Let God Sort 'Em Out, Drake Take Care, 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Tryin', Talib Kweli Quality, Tyler the Creator Call Me If You Get Lost, The Roots Game Theory, Lupe Fiasco Food and Liquor.
Lupe.
Those are the 20 that we settled on after this process, and we left some really great ones on the cutting room floor. The two hardest for me, Steve, were Freddie Gibbs and Madlib's Pinata. I'm a huge fan of that record. I love it to death, but I do understand why it had to get cut. The other one is Isaiah Rashad's Sylvia demo. Were there any really difficult ones that you had to, say goodbye to in that first episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kendrick Lamar's Damn is definitely one that was tough to say goodbye to, but we still kept the Kendrick album in the top 10. But even just reflecting on that, I'm like, wow. And then I would also probably say Outkast, Speaker Box, The Love Below. That I think we'll have some well-deserved conversation around that in Stankonia probably today. But yeah, those two for sure. I was like, ooh, okay.
So out of those 20 that we have left, we got to decide if this is the correct 20. And in going back and reflecting, I tried to figure out if there's any that were left on the cutting room floor that were the wrong decision. And I came to the conclusion that there are two somewhat weak spots. And I wanted to see if we should bring anything back into the discussion to see if they are better representations for the top 20. One of those is Talib Kweli's Quality. I think that's a little bit of a weak spot. It's a really important album to me. huge in the conscious hip hop space. Talib Kweli is an absolute legend. Personally, I'd say the best work he's ever done was on Black Star's debut record, but that's from the 90s, so it's not eligible. And so I just wanted to, talk about that real quick. Is Talib Kweli's quality deserving, or should we think about a replacement here?
First of all, the short answer is yes, it's deserving.
Okay.
I just think about the artists in hip-hop who have kept more traditionally in line with the original spirit in a lot of ways of the conscious lane of hip-hop culture. I think that Talib is certainly somebody who championed that in the early 2000s and, to this day, but really had his moments for sure whenever it came to like the cultural zeitgeist in the early 2000s. And what he was talking about, the relevancy to the moment, very socio-politically, but then also the way in which a lot of that conversation and the expression of certain themes on that album, the easiest example would be Get By. That song in itself is still very much relevant today, and it's one of those songs where that traditional boom bap beat that Kanye provides on that is just phenomenal. It is very much sitting right next to the pulse and the heartbeat of the culture itself, and there's a lot of this vibe on that album, and so that's why for me it would be tough to take that off of the list, because there's less examples then of something that might be more proximate to the blood that runs through any example that we could give.
Definitely fewer examples, and that was going to be my question. We do have Commons B. I don't think that's going anywhere. Mm-hmm. For me, that's very much going to be, I don't know about top 10 material, but upper echelon of the top 20 for me at least. So is that enough, or do we need more representation of that conscious hip hop? Because this, we have Kanye, but this is very much when he, left behind his more conscious lane from graduation, the college dropout, late registration. So, is that common album enough, or do we keep Talib? Some of the albums I think would be in contention to bring back. Missy Elliott's Missy So Addictive. That was a really tough cut. I would consider bringing that back. Another one is Wale's The Album About Nothing. Ooh, I really love that album. 2014 Forest Hills Drive from J. Cole.
That's what I thought you might go next was Cole.
So those three I would consider over that. I think J. Cole's 2014 Forest Hills Drive, you could make an argument, is very much kind of in that lane of conscious hip hop. A little bit more
to a certain extent.
To a certain extent. But I don't know. Those are the ones that are in contention for me. The other one that is probably going to be a surprise to you that I think is cut eligible here is actually Vince Staples' Summertime '06. When I went back and I tried to kind of gather these stats that might capture what it meant, and I was really, really shocked to learn that Vince Staples' Summertime '06 debuted at number 39 on the Billboard 200. It never got higher than number 39. It's by far the lowest of any of the albums we're talking about. It is not certified gold, platinum, anything. Granted, that's an imperfect measurement of what it means.
Of course.
But it does give a certain sense of like how people receive that album, and I was kind of shocked because that was a huge album for me. I loved it incredibly, and so did all of my friends. So, but that can speak to the little bubble that I was living within, thinking that holy shit, this is one of the biggest albums in the world, and then I actually look at the statistics and it's like, no, not really. So to be fair, because of that, I went back and listened to it. I listened to it front to back today. It's fucking heat. Just as good as I remember it being. Minus the two intro tracks, it is 18 songs minus the 2 intro tracks. 17 of those are incredible. I only had one song that I didn't enjoy. It would be a difficult cut, but in terms of that like cultural relevance piece, perhaps it's in the same lane as, you know, Freddie Gibbs' Madlib's Pinata, or Isaiah Rashad's Sylvia demo, where it doesn't have the same cultural impact, you know, to really resonate as a top 20 album.
I mean, it's interesting you say like cultural impact too, because I was introduced to like Sylvia demo, for example, through one of my business partners in London, who is a evangelist for Sylvia demo and Isaiah Rashad, Vince Staples, so many of artists in that same lane. So I think like culturally, there's definitely an impact regardless of the stats that it hits on, you know, the sales charts and things of that nature. But kind of going back to, you know, Talib and the space of Common and all those folks, I mean, you're absolutely right. There is representation definitely in the conversation. I mean, Lupe is also in the mix as
Very
well.
much so.
But just thinking about these albums specifically, I think another one that almost is the other side of the coin, and thinking about coins, would be 50 Cent and Get Rich or Die Trying, where that one I think may end up being a potential placement in the top 10 for me. So, yeah, there's space for the Talibs and the Commons, and, you know, at the same time, there's no denying the atomic bomb that was dropped with, you know, 50 G Unit, Aftermath, Shady Records. So, you know, the ways in which that has multiplied itself into Stars Entertainment and all of the television and movie production and Coca-Cola deals, things of that nature. It all starts with this theme of getting rich or die trying. and he already survived the dying part, so now it's just about getting rich, and he certainly did that.
So, before we move to segment 2 and start actually ordering these in terms of, you know, we're going to do 20 to 11, are there any that we should replace here, or should we stick with the 20 that we have?
I think that I agree with you as far as Cole's 2014 Forest Hills Drive should be part of this conversation. For contenders of which ones do they replace, Godson might be one of those for me. Of the album About Nothing conceptually, I think it's the concept and the execution of the concept that I think is what really drives it to be in the conversation for me. But to your points around how much of a ripple effect did it really have culturally, it seems more niche than I personally would like it to be.
Okay.
So I'm cool with that staying on the cutting room floor.
What about Missy?
So I think that I would like to create further discussion around Missy Elliott for contention to be in the top 20. My thought is Missy So Addictive actually her album that I would want to argue for her contention in the top 20? That's really where I'm stuck, because I went back and was listening to, and obviously the perennial classics like Get Your Freak Up and anthems to a certain extent with 1 Minute Man and songs like that. It's like, yeah, you have to have a conversation about this album. But then I think about Under Construction as an album that really does. I mean, she's got, you know, Gossip Folks, she's got Work It, but then there's also Funky Fresh Dress, which is an excellent homage coming right off the back of her track with Jay-Z back in the day. So there's, you know, so much homage and acknowledgement again to the culture, but then also excellent music that is essentially timeless in a lot of ways. And I think that there's more to be offered in what she put together with Under Construction than what I heard collectively as a total on Missy So Addictive. But, you know, For My People, Get Your Freak On, 1 Minute Man, those songs, 3 in particular, I think that those are some of her best work, and they are on Missy So Addictive. But at full albums connection for me and just listening through them, I might go Under Construction overall.
So I'd say, you know, personally, and again, like, I'm very much about the albums, and I'm also very much about picking unexpected picks. I think we would get castigated for picking Under Construction over Missy So Addictive. Like I'm about surprising, but I don't know about that. All right, so given that, are we pulling the trigger on any of these? I agree. I think 2014 Forest Hills Drive was an oversight. I think we should bring that back in.
Yeah.
The question is, which one do we cut?
I would go Summertime '06 and agree with you for that. Because I look at Schoolboy Q, like Blank Face LP, Mac Miller's Swimming, Push's Daytona. Like Daytona's not going anywhere.
No, Daytona's not going anywhere unless
DS2, like Future's DS2 is also solid. But
dude, I re-listened today. We're gonna it has to stay.
Yeah.
The only conversation we need to have about that is whether we pick the right Future project.
And I was just thinking the same thing. Yep.
We'll get there when we talk about it, but DS2/Future is staying. Vince Staples is a hard cut. Like I said, I went back and listened to it today, and again, I think it's still fire. North North remains one of my favorite songs of the past decade. It's not going anywhere, and all the deep cuts still hit. But again, that idea that it never got higher than number 39 on the Billboard 200, and again, it's an imperfect measurement, but everything else that we're going to talk about was no lower than 3, and we're talking about 39. So it's difficult. I don't want to cut it, but I can accept that. 2014 Forest Hills Drive is excellent. Is Talib Kweli's quality staying, or should we bring in Missy?
I mean, when I think about the full album, for me personally, I might keep Talib. But
I agree. He's really important to me.
There it is.
Massive part of what got me into hip-hop in the early 2000s when I was getting into it was Talib. So I think we should keep it, but definitely wanted to have the discussion because I do think, looking back on it, it's one of the weaker ones, but you can still make an argument and you can still respect it for what it was in the moment.
And personally for me too, I mean, Talib was very much a pivotal moment in my music career. I was in college, we got to open up for him, and it was like the first real big performance that I ever had, and then got to open up for him later on here in Philly. That's just somebody who also is very important to me personally, in addition to making a classic album.
Definitely. So the only cut is Summertime '06. I don't feel great about it, but
for 2014 Forest Hills Drive,
yeah, I think it's ultimately the right choice. All right, so we will start putting these in order, starting with number 20 and counting our way down to number 11. Steve, should we start by talking about some of the albums that are safe? Like they are definitively top 10, because to me, there are 7 that are definitively top 10, and then there's 13 that are kind of in contention here. What's definitively top 10? Like we don't need to talk about them until like later.
Lil Wayne's Carter 3.
Yep.
And we had a little conversation about it in the last episode, but Drake's Take Care.
Because it's Take Care.
Right, that's your issue.
But a Drake representative should be, because we're trying to capture,
correct,
the 21st century thus far, and Drake has to be in that conversation. So
Jay-Z's 444, I think, also, but then it gets into more of the debate. So I think a Jay-Z album,
yes, a Jay-Z album
for sure. But
I think 444 is probably going to be where we land, but it's definitely in conversation. I'd also say Clips. We have Let God Sort Him Out, but whether it's Let God Sort Him Out, Hell Hath No Fury, Pusha T is the only rapper that we have twice in here.
Yeah.
We have Daytona and we have a Clips representation.
Yeah.
So I think that's safe as well. Mm-hmm. So we don't even need to, bring any of those up. I would also say Supreme Clientele is top 10.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
Yep. One thing I do want to mention is that I would also potentially have an argument for It's Almost Dry versus Daytona.
I would too. It's Almost Dry is really good. Brambleton, Let the Smokers Shine the Coupe. Holy shit. Coming out the gate.
Even just the lead single with Diet Coke. My God.
All right. Well, we can talk about that. We can bring that back in. All All right, so those are safe. Let's now, back up. Let's go to number 20. I think it's probably Talib Kweli's Quality, even though I do love that album. We discussed it, but I mean, we nearly cut it. So I feel like that's probably going to be the 20 spot.
I would probably agree. I would say either Quality or ScHoolboy's Blank Face LP.
ScHoolboy's Blank Face LP, I have much higher. I'm not going to advocate it for it being probably any higher than 15. I'd say that's more of the appropriate range. I don't think any higher than 15 is that seems a bit ridiculous on my part, but I would like to advocate it to be higher.
Just even looking back through these, very comfortable with Quality being number 20. As far as the context is concerned, I mean, it came out in 2002, and it is an excellent combination of a variety of artists where you have Talib, you have Kanye doing a lot of production on the album, but you also have Mos Def, Pharoah Monch, Black Thought, Bilal, all of these folks who are within the same fabric of music and musicianship. The whole album works incredibly well. It's hard to find a miss on the album for me, to be honest with you. Maybe if you get towards the end with some of the album cuts like Good to You and all, but every song is incredibly well crafted with purpose and incredibly well executed in its presentation, both lyrically and sonically. It's a masterful project, and it's very much overlooked. I think that of many overlooked, projects, you were mentioning Summertime '06 earlier with Vince Staples. This one is much more easily digestible to somebody who may be coming from a less familiar lane with hip hop. To be able to tap into a project that might be more niche or underground, but yet it's very mainstream too in a lot of ways, with an early Kanye or Black Thought with the Roots, who were really finding their stride in the early 2000s at this point. So I think that just culturally, it's an excellent time capsule of the conscious heartbeat of hip hop culture in the early 2000s.
That's what I'd say is, like, I think at the time this was kind of the gold standard of conscious hip hop.
Yeah.
And it really did have like a big moment, I think, culminating with Dave Chappelle's Block Party, the documentary film that he did, and Talib Kweli and Dead Prez and, all these incredible artists coming together for that. That was really a huge moment in conscious hip hop. And like you said, it's kind of a time capsule, because I do feel like this album has kind of been a little bit lost to time. Perhaps undeservedly so, but at the time it was a very important record, and like we both said, very important to us personally in the way that it kind of shaped our love and understanding of hip hop in a very, formative time.
Yeah, most definitely.
The only stats I wanted to say is I lied earlier when I said nothing was quite in that range, but topped out at number 21, and still much higher than Vince Staples got. It is certified gold. And, Steve, I want to talk about some of the highlights. The biggest song on this record, and we're going to do this for every record that we discuss: best song, biggest song, worst song. I think the best song and the biggest song are the same here. I think it's Get By.
Yeah, I would agree. But Gorilla Monsoon Rap, Gun Music, I think both of those are definitely in contention. Waiting for the DJ is an excellent song, but Gorilla Monsoon Rap and Gun Music, I think, are very close to the level of Get By.
Agreed. I have one other that I'd just like to add to that. Shock Body. Huge fan of that song.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. The worst song. This is going to be perhaps a surprising pick, and this is very much colored by recency. But I re-listened to Rush. That song annoys the shit out of me now. Feel the rush.
Yeah.
Didn't age well. I'm gonna put that as worst song. At the moment, I did love it though. It really did get me pumped for the album. Now it annoys the shit out of me.
I do not disagree. Unfortunately, it's not the strongest representation of Talib's work.
No, little bit hokey now.
Yeah.
But at the time, I did love that song, but now not so much.
Yeah.
All right,
I fully
and
agree.
then the last one, in addition to best song, worst song, biggest song, is the 3-song sequence. We talked about sequencing, how important it is. The idea of this came to me because you can't just recommend a song to me if you want to get like the feeling of the whole record. But you can't also like nominate 6 songs for someone to listen to because they're going to lose interest. So you need like a 10 to 15 to 20 minute segment depending on the album that's really going to, get them captured. So what's the 3-song sequence you're going to recommend to someone? Listen to these 3 tracks, you will love this album.
The knee-jerk reaction is Get By, Shock Body, and Gun Music.
That's exactly what I had.
Right. But I honestly feel that a representation of the total album might be found better in Gorilla Monsoon Rap, Put It in the Air, and The Proud.
That's the other one I looked at.
Holy shit.
So the way I always try and, think about this is I think about an individual song and then I build the sequence around that. And so the 2 that I automatically went to, because they're pretty far apart, was like, all right, I'm going to start with Get By, see what's there. And then the other one was Gorilla Monsoon Rap and see what's there. I think with Shock Buddy and Gun Music being right there, I think that's the obvious answer. But I do think that other one is worthy of mention as well.
I completely agree with you, man. We were in lockstep on every aspect of this album.
Yep. All right, so Talib Kweli's Quality at number 20. Steve, what seems like an appropriate place to go here at 19?
For 19, I would say either Blank Face LP from ScHoolboy Q or might have to go Mac Miller's Swimming. One of those 2.
No.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but you're missing one, and I think Nas's Godson.
So that was one that I was considering as well, and I was like, I don't know if Godson is lower than Blank Face or Swimming, and that Blank Face and Swimming are both great albums. Where are you at with it?
My feeling is Nas's Godson or Lupe's Food and Liquor, but I know you have that much higher. I mean, I already tried to cut it. I did give it a re-listen. It holds up better than I remember, but still not great. But it was so important to me in the moment. Same with Nas's Godson. ScHoolboy and Swimmin' are just such important albums to me. And I think ScHoolboy less so, but Swimming also, I think, has a very important piece of hip-hop history. I mean, granted, some of that's due to the tragedy that surrounds that album, but also it is just an incredible record.
I would accept Nas's Godson based on it being one of the choices we have, but then it goes back to, is this even the right Nas album that we should be discussing? Because Stillmatic, I think, may be a better project than Godson. I enjoyed Hip Hop Is Dead. I very much enjoyed the Untitled album. And we didn't even discuss any of the 6 albums with Hit Boy, one of which won Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Yeah,
and multiple were nominated, and they're great projects.
Right,
but you were on the Billboard charts, and we were bringing those up as a talking point too. But I think that just King's Disease 3, Magic 2, those are very much albums that went under the radar recently, but in time will certainly be brought up in conversations as far as great hip hop albums.
I agree. Can I just give you 3 tracks off of Godson real quick?
Yeah.
And I know, like, obviously, we're talking about project as a whole, but like, Get Down, Made You Look, I Can.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really incredible songs and stand the test of time, in my opinion.
What about Stillmatic with Got Yourself a Gun, Rewind, One Mic,
Ether.
Second Childhood, like Destroy and Rebuild, but then that was saving it for last. Ether.
Mm-hmm.
Stillmatic, I think, stands up much stronger than Godson. And if I were to have Stillmatic on this list versus Swimming and Blank Face LP, both Swimming and Blank Face LP would be my talking points for spot number 19. And Food and Liquor, I think, maybe in that conversation for spot number 19 then, versus Nas's Godson.
Okay, so let's go Stillmatic.
All right.
In exchange for Stillmatic, we're putting Lupe's Food and Liquor 19. We're putting ScHoolboy Q's Blank Face LP 18.
I like it. I like
right.
it.
That's our politicking. That's our mutual exchange.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's get into Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor here. As I said in the first episode, I didn't think this album held up as much. I revisited it. It is better than I remembered from my previous re-listen. Still not as good as it was in the moment. In the moment, it was released in 2006, debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200. It is a certified gold record. It was beloved in the moment by critics, fans, everybody. And I've discussed this before, for a punk emo kid like myself, having a song like Kick Push and that representation of skateboard culture within a hip-hop song was massively important in terms of connecting with me and connecting with kids of that ilk. So a very, very important record.
Most of my appreciation, if not all of my appreciation, comes from a personal perspective, so much so that I haven't even considered what the broader public either has thought and felt about the album or was even impacted by the album, because it was so irrelevant to me because of how much of an atomic bomb this album was in a great way for me whenever it came to just my love and appreciation of rap music.
Well, speak to your experience, because I'm sure plenty of folks also, shared something similar.
For me, it was the best of what folks like Talib and in some ways even folks like Mos Def, but the Commons of for a debut project, it catapulted Lupe immediately into the conversation of being a peer to already established legends like Mos Def, Talib, Common, Chuck D, KRS immediately. And that type of not only acknowledgement and recognition, but then also being able to go back and listen to a project and hear how much talent and passion went into it. It was very clear that Lupe is somebody who, in a lot of the ways and how he represents himself very much in the martial arts, but is someone who is essentially a samurai of the game, and it makes sense as to why he named his most recent album that, because it's almost irrelevant what is happening, when it comes to the Grammy stage or the Billboard charts. It's not almost irrelevant, it is irrelevant for an artist like him, because he gets his joy from continually sharpening his sword and sharpening his pen every album and every project. And this was such a high bar to set. The fact that he has gone and surpassed what he put out on this album is, for a lot of artists, very incomprehensible. There's no sophomore slump. The only slump that you can quote unquote have on him is the way in which his label in the industry, the larger engine of it, was crushing what ended up becoming Lasers. And so this album was very much a representation of Wasalu Muhammad Jaco, and I'm just thankful that I heard it at the time that I did. I was in my senior year of college and figuring out what I wanted to do next, knowing that everything I wanted to do was hip-hop related, whether it was being a musician or at least working in some facet within the culture. and it was so much a soundtrack to my everyday life, where we even think about, what is a good 3-song sequence, for an album like this. There are several. And that's why I'm like, how could it be number 19 when you have Just Might Be Okay, Kick Push, and I Gotcha as heavyweight knockout punches for a 3-song sequence. But then you also have Daydreamin', The Cool, and Hurt Me Soul. But then you also have Pressure, American Terrorist, and The Emperor's Soundtrack. So it's a masterpiece. It's the foundation of where Lupe went, and it was also very much a inspiration for me and everything that I've continued to do in hip hop culture.
What would you say is the best song from this album?
I would probably say that the best song on the album is Daydreamin'.
That's what I have as well. Daydreamin' featuring Jill Scott. It is incredible.
Yes.
Sonically, lyrically, the whole thing. Hasn't aged a day. That's a jam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because it no pun intended, but it fully embodies a community or a city, and the entire experience of that, and each representation of that body in this daydream is just so well done. So well done. And Jill Scott's voice is perpetually timeless.
Always. Such a great feature, such a great addition to any hip-hop track. All of her solo stuff is incredible, too. Her work with Common, always amazing. Love Jill Scott. Huge part of the Block Party thing we talked about, too.
Yep. Shout out to Philly, Jilly from Philly.
Yep. And biggest song, I think, undoubtedly, Kick Push.
Yeah.
No discussion needed there.
Yeah.
Worst song. I have the instrumental featuring Jonah Matranga of One Line Drawing, an emo artist. Not great. Don't love that track.
I would agree with you because it's the one track on the album that I skip.
Yep.
If I choose to skip. So.
If you choose to skip. And 3-song sequence. I actually have one that's just slightly different from one of the ones you named already.
Mm-hmm.
My go-to 3-song sequence for this is actually Sunshine, Daydreamin', then The Cool. I really love Sunshine.
Yeah.
I think that beat's incredible. Daydreaming as the centerpiece of that 3-song sequence, that's the one for me.
No argument. I think that's a great choice. My only thing with Sunshine is I wish that there was somebody else singing the hook. But great song, though.
So, we already chose it. Number 18 is going to be ScHoolboy Q's Blank Face LP. Released in 2016, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. It is a certified gold album. To me, what this is mostly about is I find ScHoolboy Q to be a very important figure in the conversation about 2010s hip-hop, both as a feature artist, but also as a solo artist. I think his work as a solo artist kind of gets lost. It's something we talked about a little bit with Isaiah Rashad because he's part of TDE, that whole sphere, and gets overshadowed a little bit in the conversation by Kendrick, by SZA, by Ab-Soul even a little bit. But with the exception of Kendrick, I find ScHoolboy Q to be an incredible artist, and I think Blank Face LP really showcases everything that he's capable of, and he's not just the meme of 2 asses shaking on his face in Man of the Year video. He's more than that. There's a lot to him, and I think that this record showcases it. It still has some of the silly stuff, like that part, which we can discuss, but there's a lot of other moments on this record where it shows ScHoolboy Q's maturity as a songwriter and as a songcrafter and as a lyricist. So that for me is why I absolutely love this record. Steve, what about your relationship to this?
To be honest with you, My relationship to this album is pretty minimal. It's probably the most minimal of any of the albums that we'll have in this top 20. When it comes to ScHoolboy, Habits and Contradictions and Oxymoron were where I leaned into him most. Pause. But by the time we get to Blank Face and Crash Talk and Blue Lips, it was almost like ScHoolboy got lost in the mix. And if I wasn't intentional, I wasn't really tapping in. So for Blank Face, the only song I think that I really have any connection to would be that part. I really like that song a lot. But I think, Groovy Tony with Jadakiss, I love Jadakiss's verse. I think it's fire. I love the fact that he had E40 on the album as well. But it's not one that I repeatedly went back to and could give you these are my favorites on this project. Is it because I never really listened to it enough for it to connect.
Well, that's a mistake. Shame on you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel ashamed.
So, I think I will take a little bit of the lead then. Best song, I think, unquestioned, is Groovy Tony, Eddie Kane, the song with Jadakiss that you discussed. This speaks to what I was talking about in terms of ScHoolboy Q having his more introspective moments. And there's something that ScHoolboy always does with his vocal delivery, and you hear it perfectly in this song, where he's adopting this really aggressive style, and then he gets to this one line where he says, "We were just kids." And in that moment, all of the bravado and all of the posturing falls out, and it's somber. We were just kids. All of the kind of stunting around this lifestyle is just like, nope, we were just kids. And all the sadness is right there in his performance of like that one lyric. And it's absolutely incredible. So, for me at least, best song by far is Groovy Tony, Eddie Kane. Yeah. The biggest song is unquestionably that part. I also think that part has an argument for worst song. And I want to be clear here. I absolutely fucking love that part. But it is one of the silliest songs in the world, mostly centered around Kanye shit. But also it's fucking hilarious.
This was Kanye really starting to fracture.
This is Kanye starting to go off the rails.
Yeah, it was 2016. That was exactly the moment that he started to fracture.
Yep. And I think you can tell on this verse.
Yeah.
But also, I love this song.
It's hilarious, and it's also sad.
Yeah.
Very sad. Yeah.
Very much so. And then the 3-song sequence is going to be one that is surprising. And it's mainly because I try and find the centerpiece. And it should be Groovy Tony, Eddie Kane. But then you have that part, which would be really good. But then Lord Have Mercy is only 1:44. It's kind of more of an interlude. And Know You're Wrong is one of the weaker songs on the album. So I couldn't find one around that. And Steve, this is going to be your homework since you don't have a huge relationship with this album. Your 3-song sequence is going to be from later in the record. It is Never Change into Straight Ballin' into Black Thoughts.
Cool.
You're going to have to report back and tell me how you were in fact wrong that this is number 18. Should be much higher.
Cool. That sounds good. I'm totally down for it because, one, I'm always down for a new experience and to learn more, but then 2, I don't even know if I got past Dope Dealer.
All right. So where should we go for number 17 here?
I would say number 17 would be an argument between Mac Miller's Swimming and Stillmatic and 2014 Forest Hills Drive.
I mean, we nearly didn't even have it in our top 20.
True.
So let's be real to ourselves. I think if we didn't initially have it in our top 20, I think it kind of has to be 2014 Forest Hills Drive right now.
Possibly.
I could go Stillmatic.
2014.
I could also go DS2 here. I think those are the 4. I think that's what we're kind of surrounding. So let's find an order for these 4, since I think these are the 4 that are right around here.
Great point.
To me, the weakest of these is Stillmatic, but obviously huge impact
I would say it's probably DS2.
Okay. So let's go DS2 here.
Yeah.
Let's follow
And
that.
it's not a weak. None of these are weak projects.
No.
You know,
It's top 20.
it's everything's
top 20 of the fucking
everything's relative. Just
century.
even when I said that, I was like, oof, I hate the fact that I just said that. But yeah.
But I mean, it's all relative, like you said. Like we're in
Yeah.
the top 20 of the entire century so far. So like, you know, it's a 96 out of 100 instead of a 98 out of 100.
Right.
Whatever. All right, so I'll agree. Let's go DS2 17. I think probably let's go Forest Hills Drive 16. We didn't even have it in our top 20. We've given the listeners enough service, but we didn't even have it in our top 20 initially. Then let's go Mac Miller's Swimming 15. Even though I like it substantially better than Stillmatic, but there's no denying Nas. So let's go Nas 14. Is that number?
cool with that.
Those numbers
Yeah.
are right?
Yeah, they are.
17, 16, 15, or 14. Yeah. So let's go 17, Futures DS2. So here are the two talking points here. We talked a lot about this in the opening episode. We needed some kind of representation of the whole Atlanta scene. Young Thug and Gunna, Migos, Young Jeezy, Gucci Mane, everything that was happening from the mid-2000s on in Atlanta. We need something to represent that. We settled on Futures DS2. Why do you think that is a good choice to represent the whole Atlanta thing that happened?
Well, it's interesting. Like the thing about Atlanta, to use that, you know, the term, is the fact that it's the heartbeat of Black America, and there are so many artists who have not only influenced rap music and hip hop culture for the last really a decent period of time. You could definitely go back to Freaknik, but I would realistically say within the last 20 years, Atlanta has full on become the epicenter of Black America in so many ways, musically, even a lot of TV shows that are coming from there. But then I think one of the other big things is the fact that so much television and movie production also moved to Georgia, or did a lot of work out of Georgia, even though it may have been Hollywood based or New York based. It allowed for Atlanta to become almost like a new Great Migration, where, you know, in the early 20th century, you had so many Black folks moving from the South up into the Northeast or into the Midwest or out to California. And in the early 2000s, and even to this day, in a lot of ways, you have folks from New York, Philly, Chicago, DC, Baltimore moving down to Atlanta, or the Atlanta area, and in Georgia. And it's created so much opportunity for a place that already had its own heartbeat to now take on the rhythms of so many other regions and cultural aspects of Black America. And it showed up so much in the music. And I think that artists like Future, artists like the Migos, you know, so many folks who come from Atlanta, and, you know, we definitely have, you know, representation from Outkast and some of the legends of Atlanta hip hop already in our list, but there are so many people who have gone on to shift and innovate in unique ways, aspects of the culture that wouldn't exist without so much plurality kind of moving itself into Atlanta. And so for DS2 specifically, I think that while there are certain, you know, influences in some of Future's music that does come from New York and does come from other regions, it is full on an album that from its sonic structure to the lyricism and the wordplay is very much Atlanta through and through. This album has a song for all of it.
So the only other question here is, did we pick the right Future album? Because I think a lot of people would say his 2014 mixtape Monster would be the correct pick. Mm-hmm. For me, it's DS2. But are we doing Monster dirty? Is that the more important project, do you think?
I don't think we're doing it dirty. I mean, because once you open the door, I mean, yes, Monster's for sure going to be in the conversation, but when you bring mixtapes into the picture, it opens the door tremendously for Future's catalog. And there's not necessarily a problem with that. But I don't know if I personally would have Monster as the number 2, even though those songs were ringing off in the club, you know, at a certain point in life where it was just a lot of fun. And so I think that for me, you know, I Never Liked You is in the conversation for his, you know, one of his top albums. Evil, I think, is also right there. So I would want to replace DS2 with any of those options, but whenever I start to consider Monster, then it kind of feels like it opens up the floodgates to allowing any of his catalog or the majority of his catalog to be up for that conversation. Because, and it's not a knock against Future, but a lot of his catalog sounds very similar in a lot of ways too. So.
And I think DS2 is the crowning achievement, the most consistent one, and the one where he kind of perfected everything that he was doing on all of those mixtapes before. Yeah. I think it all came together on DS2. At least,
yeah, because he's essentially talked about the same thing for every project that he's put out, but the one that is the most cohesive and the best example of a complete picture of Future is DS2.
Agreed. Best song. Mine might surprise you, but it's an unquestioned best song for me on this record. It's the one that I've been bumping since the day it came out, and it's still on a lot of my playlists, and it is I Serve the Bass.
That's valid. I thought you might actually pick a different one, but that is full on. And
I Serve the Bass, and it's not even a question for me as far as best song goes.
I mean, I would say for me, it's where you at with Drake. That beat for me, I think, is what gives it just a slight edge over I Serve the Bass or Stick Talk. Yeah, for me, yeah, Where You At is probably my choice for... No, it's not even probably. Where You At is definitely my choice for the best song on the album.
That's fair. I Serve the Bass, I just want to say, like, that beat is so grimy. Like,
yeah.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Like, it's so grimy, and I love it for that alone.
Yo, Metro Boomin.
He is... And that's another important piece of this, like, that we didn't say, is, like, Metro Boomin has to be top 5 most important producers of the last, you know,
easily
25 years.
Easily.
Yeah, easily. And so
Mike
the
Will
fact
made
that
it.
Yeah.
Metro Boomin.
His 21 Savage projects, very important to me.
Mm-hmm. His projects with Big Sean are also fire.
Biggest song, and this brings into a conversation, we're considering the deluxe release rather than just the original?
Fuck up some commas.
Yeah,
fuck up some commas.
All right,
yeah,
good.
Definitely.
Worst song for me is the Percocet and Stripper Joint. Don't like that song. Not a fan.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, the downside about this album is that there's probably like 3 or 4 that I could be like, all right, this is the worst song of the project.
Yeah, it's always been a little bit of a thing with Future for me, is like the highs are so high and then the lows are like borderline unlistenable. But by and large, his projects, like, usually it's only like 3 or 4 songs, but like those 4 songs are bad for me. Yeah. But on the whole, it's an incredible project, and it's so representative of his whole sound, and I love it. 3-song sequence. I'm going with the opening. Thought it was a drought into I Serve the Bass into Where You At. There's some other ones, but that's the one, like, coming right out of the gate.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I want like first, I really want to include Stick Talk somewhere in there, but it's surrounded by Freako and Lil One. So unfortunately, Stick Talk can't be in that three. So I would also have to go with the first three on the album.
Yep, it's really good. And so that brings us to number 16, which we decided was.
It's between 2014 Forest Hills Drive and Swimming. So I it's a damn. They both feel so similar. Like just as far
Similar
as
how? Because they're very different.
they're very
But
different albums, but I feel like as far as the amount of reflection and introspection that both J. Cole and Mac Miller took to create these albums, they're for me in the same lane in that regard.
agreed. And I think at least what to me gives Swimming the edge is sonically. And the way that he utilizes the full band and his utilization of Thundercat and all this jazz influence and the fact that they recorded so much of it with live instrumentation.
Yeah.
That is what just pushes it slightly over the edge to me.
Yeah, I agree. So let's continue with number 16 is J. Cole, 2014 Forest Hills Drive.
All right, so we talked about this a little bit in terms of historical context in the first episode, but I'll bring it up again. You know, I think there's a pretty well accepted triumvirate of the greatest rappers of all time conversation for the 2010s, and it's often Kendrick, J. Cole, Drake.
Yep.
To me, in terms of like artistry, it's Kendrick, huge gap, then J. Cole, then Drake. In terms of success and cultural impact, it's Drake, not so big of a gap, Kendrick, huge gap, J. Cole. So like kind of whichever way you want to measure it, he's not at the top. So I don't know, that just affects in some ways his standing, even though I do respect him greatly as an artist. And I mean, he's still number 17 in the top 20. But, I don't have as much appreciation for him as I do for a Drake or for a Kendrick. And often I like his features better than some of his like album work. Like his feature on A Lot by 21 Savage is one of my favorite verses he's ever done.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I don't know. So that's my feelings on this. But Steve, where are you at with this project?
I'm glad that we're discussing J. Cole, and I'm glad that we're discussing it today instead of 2 days ago. And I got to shout out my homie Dre, because we were talking about Cole in, one of the group chats, and he encouraged me to re-listen to The Fall Off. And up until that point, I had been struggling a bit with my perspectives on The Fall Off. And, especially after re-listening to The Fall Off, re-listening to Friday Night Lights, re-listening to even, KOD, it made it a bit harder for me to continue to accept 2014 Forest Hills Drive as the representation of J. Cole's best body of work for a top 20 compilation. But the album itself, I think, at this point in his career, it's, his third album. He had a bit of a lofty expectation with the first project that I think for his expectations and the fans' expectations, his debut was excellent, but didn't meet the hope, that folks were kind of hearing whenever they heard Lupe's debut. And so Born Sinner helped to reset expectations and really opened up J. Cole to a listener base that was substantially broader and significantly more of a catalyst for his celebrity status in a lot of ways. And then 2014 Forest Hills Drive was that introspective, reflective opportunity to kind of bridge the gap of where I've been versus where I'm about to go. I think it was very symbolic that he took the photo of him sitting on the roof of his childhood home as the album cover, and coinciding with the title of the album. So I'm first, I'll just say, like, with all of that said, I'm definitely open to discussing this and keeping this as the representation of Cole on the list. But personally, after going back and revisiting his discography, especially starting with the Fall Off, but then going back to Friday Night Lights and KOD, those 3 albums may hold up in the long term more than 2014 Forest Hills Drive will.
So the only thing I'll say about 2014 Forest Hills Drive, in addition to kind of what you said, is it feels like his own response to Good Kid, Mad City, in the sense that Kendrick told this very autobiographical story, and this was J. Cole's response to that. I won't say his version of it, because they are different, but nonetheless his own take on the kind of origin stories of J. Cole.
Yeah.
And to me, the only one that you didn't mention, and it actually has my favorite J. Cole track ever, is For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
Neighbors is my favorite and will remain my favorite J. Cole song forever. And I don't foresee that changing.
Great
Although
song.
maybe what's the one off the most recent one? The Fall Off. It is the double track, and I was talking about this with my buddies the other day. Bombs in the Ville / Hit the Gas. Love that track a lot, and it feels like J. Cole was listening to a lot of Frank Ocean, and with the beat switches, with the sonics, there's a lot of Frank Ocean influence that I'm hearing on the Fall Off. That hasn't had enough time to digest, but I do think that will hold up like fine wine eventually.
The Fall Off will certainly,
Yep.
The Fall Off will certainly hold up like fine wine.
Yeah, but 2014 Forest Hills Drive is a great representation. Great stuff from J. Cole. Best song for you? What do you think? Best song? To me, it's between 2.
I would say that the best song is either Love Yours or No Role Models.
I think it's probably No Role Models for me. It's the one I return to all the time. Is that also the biggest song? Or is
probably.
Wet Dreams bigger?
No. No Role Models, I think, is the biggest song whenever it comes to this album. But the one that I revisit the most, interestingly enough, is Hello. I've played that song more than any other song on this album by a substantial margin.
Interesting.
And you know what is also very interesting? The second most played song that I have off of this album is Note to Self.
Note to Self is really good.
Yeah. And I've always wondered how those two are far and away the most listened to songs that I've had for this album versus any of the other songs. And it is such a significant margin that it almost feels like I didn't even listen to the rest of the album whenever it comes to the play count.
Does Tidal track this for you? Where are you getting this?
No, I also have the iTunes. I keep MP3s of things that I really love, just in case streaming pulls the plug one day. I lost
it all once upon a time, and I couldn't return to it. I used to have all that, and I loved it. That data was huge. But I think No Role Models is the best song and the biggest song.
Yes.
Worst song. I think it's Wet Dreams. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, that's one that I skip.
Yeah.
It
was a huge song and a huge single at the time.
I never even needed it at the time. I was good.
Me neither. 3-song sequence. I think you kind of identified it in the sense that I think it needs to include no role models in Hello. It's just a matter of whether we want apparently on the tail end of that, or do we want GOMD on the opening of that?
GOMD on the opening. Absolutely.
I think that's absolutely the three-song sequence of this act.
For sure. Yep. Definitely.
Okay. So let's go to Swimming now. And we are talking about Mac Miller's Swimming, his 2018 release. This is my favorite album of 2018, although there is a 2018 release higher on this list, because it is not just my list. But yeah, let's talk about Swimming. Debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. It is certified platinum. This is Mac Miller's crowning achievement, made all the more heartbreaking by his untimely passing. An artist coming into his own, dies of an accidental overdose. It's a unfortunate story as old as time as far as music and artists are concerned. But I think that also contributed to kind of why it became so beloved, because it felt like, you know, almost an elegy from the artist himself because of how introspective the record was. What are your feelings on this record?
I think that it is both heartening to hear somebody as musically diverse and talented as Mac Miller reaching this point in his career, and just so heartbreaking that he lost his life within, you know, a month weeks of this release. It's crazy. It was crazy in the moment. It still shocks and stuns me in a lot of ways. There's a lot of personal connection because, you know, he's from Pittsburgh, and, you know, even though I rep New York and I've been now living in Philly, I was born in the Bronx, and so I always felt aligned with, you know, hip-hop being born in the Bronx. I was born in the Bronx. I would always go back and visit New York and, you know, feel a connection and a spirit in a lot of those ways. I grew up out in Johnstown, PA, and it's about an hour and 15 from Pittsburgh. Having my youth and adolescence essentially raised in Johnstown and feeling very isolated, you know, as somebody who always loved hip-hop and loved rap music, feeling like there was a lot of cultural connection around me outside of my family or folks in my church. It was refreshing whenever Mac and Wiz made it to the scene whenever I was in college. And, you know, me and my homie, we did have an opportunity to connect with ID Labs, and unfortunately that fell through, and that's where Mac and Wiz were at the time. And he unfortunately passed, you know, at what is now a peak of his career, because his career, you know, there was never any fall off, or there was never any, you know, other side of the mountain for Mac Miller. He lived till he got to the peak.
And it very much was that upward trajectory, because right before this came The Divine Feminine, which is also an incredible project.
Yeah. And then everything that he was doing in the jazz lane, you know, Larry Fisherman and all of, you know, those pseudonym projects that he was doing on the low too. He was incredible. He was such a asset to hip hop culture and such a student of not only just hip hop and rap, but of music in general. It was such a massive loss to anyone who loves artistry and loves music.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of that is why I have such a personal connection to it, is because, you know, I'm a, you know, guitarist and a bass player, and so sometimes I can have a hard time finding an entry point with the musicality of hip-hop. I mean, I feel it, but I can't identify in the same exact way. So the way that it's integrating all these live musicianship into it, like, it's such an easy thing. And I'll never forget the Tiny Desk concert that he did. I think it's one of the most incredible live performances, with Thundercat on the bass and the rest of the band. Like, it's unbelievable. And he just rides those waves, and it's like spoken word poetry over this beautiful sonic soundscape. And, you know, I'm just in love with this album, very much so. Personal favorite.
Same.
So let's talk best song. What do you think?
Wow.
There's a lot.
There are a lot. It's hard. I won't say my first thought because I know that that's the biggest song. So best song might be 2009.
Interesting. That's in contention for me.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is Small Worlds. And a lot of it does have to do with that Tiny Desk concert and the live performance of that song. I think it's Small Worlds. I also have a huge, I won't say soft spot because it's an incredible song, but Jet Fuel. Also a huge fan.
Yeah, it's a great song. Great song.
Biggest song, I think, unquestionably, is Self-Care.
Yeah, Self-Care or Ladders. But okay. Self-Care, I think Self-Care had the video. It was on the radio a little more so than Ladders was. I would agree.
Streams on Spotify by a substantial margin.
Yeah, no, Self-Care is definitely the biggest song on the album.
Worst song. I'm going to go with There Isn't One, but if you're going to make me choose one, it's Perfecto.
Yep, Perfecto, yeah.
But
yeah.
I still like Perfecto. It's not a bad song. It's just if I have to pick one, it's going to be Perfecto.
Yep.
The 3-song sequence, this is difficult. Because Self-Care is surrounded by Perfecto and Wings I quite like. Ladders after that's Self-Care, Wings, Ladders. That has a conversation. Not my pick, but I don't know. What would you say for the 3-song sequence for this record?
I would say Jet Fuel, 2009, and So It Goes.
That's a really good one. I think that might be my pick as well. The only other one I'm going to offer up is the opening of the record. Come Back to Earth, Hurt Feeling, What's the Use? Yeah. What's the use?
Right. No, that's a great. I mean, it kicked off the album.
Kick off the record.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah. Yep. And my 3 are the 3 that closed the record.
And again, I'll just say, do we have this too low? Might have it too low, Steve. I think it might be a little bit too low.
Well, if we do, I don't know how much higher it's going because we've got some incredible projects on the way. Yeah.
That brings us to number 14, Nas's Illmatic, a late replacement
Stillmatic
for God's Son. Oh, right.
Stillmatic.
Released in 2001. Talk to us about the cultural impact here.
Oh man, the cultural impact of Stillmatic was multifaceted.
Very much so.
I mean, the biggest cultural impact was by far Jay-Z and Nas's beef and their back and forth with the diss tracks and all that ultimately dealt the knockout blow with Nas's Ether. The fact that a song on this album became a verb, Ether is a verb now because of that song and that battle and what that song did to the cultural perception of Jay-Z at that time. It was definitely and still holds up as one of the greatest diss tracks of all time. But I think that culturally also, One Mic was an excellent reset for hip-hop at a time where it was very much still reeling from the deaths of Tupac and Biggie. And Nas obviously predates their passing with the release of Illmatic and It Was Written. But One Mic, Rewind, Second Childhood, songs like that helped to give folks within the culture the continued belief that someone like Pac, with that skill set, with the storytelling, with the caliber of pen that Nas has, that somebody can continue to carry the torch. I think that it also did a great job for Nas's career as well, because not only did it hit at the right time in 2001 for a new generation that wasn't tapped into 94 and 96 with his first 2 albums, were able to get a new, because they definitely knew. I can just tell you right now, they already knew about Jay-Z. When Jay-Z dropped Hard Knock Life Volume 2 in 98, that, for folks who weren't already tapped into the culture, set him apart from everybody else except for a DMX. So Nas got lost in the shuffle in a lot of ways in the early 2000s, and this album helped to bring him back into the conversation as far as folks who are at the forefront of hip hop, and he has stayed there since.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add to that is, regarding the Ether versus Takeover, Ether buried Jay-Z deep, deep in the ground, but the only point that Jay-Z had was his line about the one hot record per 10-year average, or whatever that line was, because I do actually agree with that, is that it was written, Nostradamus after that, pretty weak, or whatever record Nostradamus was on.
That was on Nostradamus is the name of the album.
Was the name of the album. Yeah, so it was written, Nostradamus, pretty weak, especially compared to the incredible heights that he reached with his debut, Illmatic. And Stillmatic was a return to form for Nas. So it was very important, like you said, for his career to come back to the forefront with an incredible record. I think that continued with Godson after that, and he's been on a great trajectory since. So, Stillmatic was very important for Nas's personal career after two, I think weaker records in his discography following the incredible heights of Illmatic.
I would say I Am is the weaker one. I would say Illmatic and It Was Written are solid, but I Am and Nostradamus were the two that fell off.
Yes. So, best song.
I would say the best song is One Mic.
I think I agree. Yeah, I do agree. It's not wrapped up in all the beef thing. Like,
yeah,
it's got a larger point to prove rather than just burying Jay-Z deep under the ground.
I agree. But one of the things I would say is that as I've continued to listen to the album as I've gotten older, Second Childhood stands up stronger and stronger as a contender for the best song on the album.
For me, I'll just do the 3-song sequence right now. I think it's pretty clearly, at least to me, Rewind, One Mic, Second Childhood. I think by far that's the best 3-song sequence.
I would be hard pressed to put an argument against that, but Ether, Got Yourself a Gun, and Smokin' are also an excellent 3, but Smokin' doesn't.
The weak point of
exactly
all the songs that we just mentioned, and that's why for me it's that Ether, biggest song. Worst song, probably My Country featuring Millennium Thug. Not a huge
I kind of liked My Country.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, as far as like, maybe What Goes Around.
Yeah, it's something from the end. The end, it falls off a little bit.
After exactly. If it were a 10-song album and ended with Nas and AZ together on the Flyest, it would most certainly be a we would have already had it in the top 20, possibly top 10.
We could have it higher.
Yes.
We have 3 albums left to choose, and I think we have about 7 that are in contention for these 3 spots. We got number 13, number 12, number 11 that we're going to finally cover in this episode. And Steve, I don't know. This is where we're going to have to start making some really difficult cuts, because this is where we're getting into the top 10 as well.
Yep.
Do you have any that are like clearly number 13 for you here? I have one that I feel like is definitely number 13. Then 12 and 11, it gets real murky for me.
So, based off of the 3 that we have with Common's B, Pusha T's Daytona, and 50's Get Rich or Die Trying, my number 13 would be Common's B.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, well then there it is then. But the other thing I was gonna say was that would also then depend on if we stuck with Daytona or if that switched to It's Almost Dry. But even as I say it out loud. I'm
I
like,
don't think
no,
it depends.
Commons,
I think
exactly.
it's Commons B. The only one I would have also in contention here is Roots Game Theory, but I know that's a very, very high one for you. So like I'd also defer to you there. I think that might be 13 and 12 though.
I would be open to considering Game Theory moving into moving into 11 to 20. So then if it's between the Roots Game Theory, Commons B, and Pusha T's Daytona, shout out to Kanye even just having a hand in two of the ones that we're discussing. I'm torn. All
right, let's talk about Commons B. It's a personal favorite of mine. Absolutely in love with this record. Very important to me at the time. I think as we alluded to before with the conversation about Talib, I personally find this to be the gold standard of conscious hip-hop, at least in the modern era, not taking into account the earlier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Released in 2005, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. It is a certified platinum record. Kanye West produced pretty much the whole thing. I mean, he did produce the whole thing, but, you know, other contributions here and there. But
Jay Dilla.
Yep. Beyond that, Steve, what does this record mean? Where does it fit into the larger hip-hop landscape?
It did a great job at being that gold standard. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, how sad it was by 2016 where Kanye started to fracture. In 2005, he was certainly in a space where he was much more centered, and having that type of clarity allowed for jazz to show up in a very intentional way, kicking off the album with the B intro. But then at the same time going right into some incredibly traditional boom bap with the corner, but bringing in the Last Poets. And the Last Poets are so important in that proto-rap era of the late 1960s and early 1970s for everything that they were doing, you know, along with folks like Gil Scott-Heron and others who really helped to pave the way through spoken word and through jazz-styled rhyming on songs. You know, having those two be the introduction to a concise yet dense album was just an excellent choice, and it doesn't let up the more you continue through the album, and it also gives you so many other sonic experiences. You know, Testify, I think, is a masterful track that gives you some of that boom bap, but then also gives you a bit of, you know, soul and R&B with the sample and
storytelling.
Incredible. Common is, it's shocking to me how underrated Common is as a rapper.
Same. I mean, anyone who's responsible for her, like,
oh, I used to love her. Yeah,
I used to love her. Like, what? Come on now.
Mm-hmm. It's not even taking into account the fact that, you know, he was also a b-boy and could break, so he also, you know, embodies other elements of hip-hop culture too, and can do them really well, let alone his success as an actor. But I think most importantly, whenever it comes to the skill of emceeing, you know, his pen is clearly showcased and well represented on albums like this, but his ability to freestyle off the top is the best representation of how tapped in he is to the culture and how much he loves this culture, and the culture has certainly loved him back. And I think the level of fame that he subsequently achieved because of this album allowed for the other doors to open into acting, and you know, the fact that he's in John Wick movies, you know, and then can turn around and make an incredible album with Pete Rock. You know, it's Common, and his career trajectory are certainly tied together through what he accomplished on this album.
100%. And, you know, I only want to add two things. You mentioned the sonic diversity with B going into the corner, and then Go, featuring John Mayer. And,
Yeah.
I mean, 2005, John Mayer was a big deal. Might be the world's biggest
Huge.
douchebag, but he's a fucking hell of a musician. The second thing that I just wanted to mention, I wish we had it in the top 10 so I could take a side quest about Common's top 5 acting roles. I'll just say that him in John Wick 2 is one of the greatest things that's ever fucking happened. And him in Smokin' Aces and his relationship with Alicia Keys in that movie, also one of the greatest things that's ever happened. We can't go on that full side quest right now because we don't have time, but I'll just leave that there for everyone, including you, Steve. Best song? This is really difficult, but I have it as The Food. And it has to be the live performance from the Chappelle Show.
Yeah.
It's so much better than the studio version. But
Absolutely.
It's The Food.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's The Food, and very close to it, though, is The Corner for me personally. I think The Corner is the most played song for me that I've listened to on this album.
Mine is the intro, B.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to pick that as a best song, though, because it is an intro, but, like, at the same time, like, I mean, it stands on its own.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I have The Food. The live version has to be the live version, but a close second is the B intro.
Testify
song?
Also, though.
Ooh, Testify is great.
Testify actually might be the biggest song, too. I think that I heard that one played on BET more than any of these other songs.
That was a hard one for me, is to decide on the biggest song. I mean, at the time, it was The Corner and The Food, but also the John Mayer influence made Go huge. Testify was also huge. I mean, that was for the heads. I mean, if we're talking streams on Spotify, which again is just a metric, not a perfect metric, but it's Go by about 20 million.
God damn, I didn't think it would be like that.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm just thinking of folks who, you know, were just raving about the album when it came out, and you know, I was in my sophomore to junior year of college, and it was at a PWI, and the whole campus is going crazy about this album. And the song that they were going crazy to the most, which was blowing my mind, was the B intro.
It's unbelievable, dude. Like,
but the fact that you have a jazz track going off in 2005 at a predominantly white college campus where everybody's listening to, you know, D4L's Laffy Taffy as the number one requested song, because I was DJing all of the parties. Yeah. But you know, you got John Mayer on it.
Yeah,
Go's going to be that one.
It has a very specific cultural cachet with let's just call it white women.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. So I don't know. Biggest song I think is Go, but I could be convinced otherwise.
Because The Food was also on Chappelle Show, and nobody did anything more in 2005 than watch Chappelle Show.
Nope, it was the biggest show on the planet at that time.
Yeah,
that specific reporting. Yeah. Worst song? There isn't one. Once again, if I am forced to choose one, I think it's Faithful.
Wow. Wow.
Faithful or Real People?
Wow. Neither one of those two were
what
I
would
thought
be
you
yours?
Were. Either Love Is or Shy City.
Oh, I love Shy City. I don't know, but like I said, I mean, there isn't one. Like this.
Yeah. Faithful, I love Faithful. I couldn't imagine Faithful not being on this album.
No, I mean, I can't imagine any of them.
Yeah.
This album. Like, and again, like that does beg the question a little bit. Like, is this too low? But I think what it comes down to, at least, is like the highest highs of this record don't match the highest highs of what's above this. But it's so consistent front to back. I don't know, it's hard.
The more we've talked about it, the more I've reestablished my appreciation for it. But then I think about the Roots Game Theory as the next one on the list, as one spot higher. And I'm torn a bit between Game Theory and B now.
So Game Theory, not necessarily number 12. We have the right to make a switch here at the last moment, but
it's interesting how many of these albums, though, that we've selected that are between '02 and '07.
I mean, for me at least, like 2007, 2008, all I was listening to was Currency mixtapes over and over.
Right. And Wayne mixtapes
mixtapes,
are going crazy.
Yep. All right, so Game Theory, released in 2006. I think widely considered to be the Roots' crowning achievement, although
in the 2000s, because
in the 2000s, I think, Things Fall Apart is probably the Roots album.
Yes.
But Game Theory from the 2000s. Steve, this is a huge record for you. So
personally, I think that Black Thought is probably the best rapper of all time. Skill set, delivery. If you put Black Thought on a microphone and put any other rapper next to him, and they had to go toe to toe, just the skill and the art of rapping, just put on some instrumentals and have them go. I don't know if there's anybody that would defeat him. That's why I think that he's the best. His delivery, his wordplay, his ability to have an unlimited amount of flows, the charisma, all of those things that he can execute on a microphone. Nobody realistically in hip hop has rapped more on a public stage than Black Thought. Every night, 5 days a week, he is on stage rapping and performing due to their gig with the Tonight Show. Nobody's been more consistent in hip hop than him in that regard. So, and that to him is like going to the gym. That's light work for him. And so he's always keeping the sword sharp, sharper than pretty much everyone, because he is so consistent in that regard. And Game Theory is such a well executed representation of somebody with that skill set and that caliber of MC collaborating with arguably the best band leader of the last 25 years in Questlove. What Questlove has done for so many other artists like Lauryn Hill, like Erykah Badu, like D'Angelo, like, there's the like list goes on and on and on. Questlove always brings his best to his own projects, and the Roots as a collective, James Poisner and Captain Kirk and Tuba Gooding Jr. and all of those guys, Scott Storch being a part of the crew for a little while, but all of them truly locked in on this album in such a cohesive way that when it comes to, especially when we're thinking about a 3-song sequence, for me it almost feels like Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor, where there are several 3-song sequences that can give you maybe not even just a great capture of the essence of this album, but also a great capture in what could be the best of hip hop.
The only thing I'd add to what you talked about is, something I talked about with Mac Miller, and it's, my personal connection musically with the Roots. And because, I'm more traditionally guitar, bass, like that's what I connect with. And for that reason, The Tipping Point is my personal Roots album, because I find that one to be the most interesting sonically, but I don't think it holds a candle to Game Theory lyrically. And I think that was purposeful. I think The Tipping Point was literally built to be a showcase for the kind of the musicianship, and the lyricism, the vocals kind of took a back seat. But in terms of Game Theory, I mean, this is another record that's kind of just flawless front to back. There's not really a skippable track. It's a real sonic experience where you just kind of sit down, listen to the whole thing through, and it's one where it's a little bit hard to pick like a standout track to me, because it's also just consistently good, and it all works together and builds off of one another. So with that, I think biggest song is probably obvious. I think it's Here I Come.
I mean, yeah, biggest song. Yeah, that's probably the correct choice. I mean, it was also used as like the closing credits on various Hollywood movies and stuff like that. I don't know what the play count is. But
it was on some video games, some EA Sports video games in that era.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It was getting great sync deals. So, yeah I'm not surprised.
That biggest song, I think it's probably that. Best song is a much, much harder conversation.
Oh, yeah. That's a very hard conversation.
Because, like, it's such a just kind of cohesive project where, like, each part is... It's each song is... Or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, so to speak. So it's hard to, like, pick one out. I think, personally, I think it's Clock with No Hands.
Whoa! Let's go! Yes.
Yeah?
That's my choice too.
I think it's that.
I did not think that we were gonna have the same best song for this album. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's the right choice.
For me, Clock with No Hands on this album, and it's definitely for folks who may be unfamiliar with this album, but you might be familiar with the comparison that I'll give. But I feel like Clock with No Hands on this album is the same as Sing About Me I'm Dying of Thirst on Kendrick's Good Kid Mad City.
And it's kind of like, it's a tough listen in some ways, but it's the linchpin that holds the entire record together. And like without it doesn't fall apart, but it doesn't have the same impact.
Clock with No Hands allows the album to come to its conclusion.
Yes.
It's the beginning of the epilogue.
Worst song, this is another one where I don't necessarily have one, but if you're going to force me, am I allowed to pick the 28-second intro?
I love the intro.
I think that's cheating. And I think it's just cheating. I think Take It There is probably my least favorite. But again, it's nearly a perfect album, so that's difficult even saying that, but I think that's probably my least favorite.
So your bread and butter, I think, would be for me the weakest choice
for that.
Because it could end with Can't Stop This and everything would be
probably
perfect.
Should end with Can't Stop This.
Yeah.
3-song sequence. So Clock with No Hands is a little bit difficult because what's surrounding it isn't the strongest. It's still very strong, but I think to me it's probably Game Theory, Don't Feel Right, into In the Music.
Those are my top 3 songs on the album, and they are also in sequence. Yep. So I fully agree with that. It would be cool to have Here I Come as part of that sequence, and with Here I Come being surrounded by Baby and Long Time, there could be an argument made that those 3 could be the 3-song sequence, but just because the argument could be made doesn't mean I would even agree with it. I think that Game Theory, Don't Feel Right, and In the Music are hands down the 3-song sequence to give anybody for this album.
So now, number 11, and the last one that we're going to be discussing in this episode. We're saving the top 10 for they all get their own individual episode. So closing it out is Pusha T. There is some debate amongst us. Is this Daytona, which I think it should be, but It's Almost Dry is definitely in the conversation. I think King Push could be in the conversation if you really want to bring it there. Pusha T has been incredibly prolific and consistent in his later career, and then him and Malice got back together and dropped an absolute classic with Let God Sort Him Out. So
yeah.
All right, let's talk about it. So to me, it's Daytona. The only knock against it that I have is that it's only a 7-song project, and 6 of those songs are absolute fucking heaters. And all of them are like consistently heaters. But there is one weak song, and it's only a 7-song project. So like that's a knock. It's Almost Dry, Brambleton absolute fucking heat. Let the Smokers Shine the Coop, absolute fucking heat. The rest of the project is really consistently good. I can only remember one song off the top of my head. I didn't do the prep for It's Almost Dry because this is a late edition, but like off the top of my head, only one song is really weak on that. I don't know. Where are you at with these two?
So I think you make a great point that Daytona's only 7 songs, and unfortunately that counts against it if giving a direct comparison to It's Almost Dry. And for me, I agree. I think that personally Infrared is the weak point on that, and it's the last song. So really you have 6 masterpieces, which is great. And then I look at It's Almost Dry, and I do not see a single song that is weak in comparison to you have 12 certified incredible songs versus 6 out of 7 incredible songs. And that's why I think that It's Almost Dry, if I'm going track for track and going back and forth and thinking about one that may stand up over the other, I think It's Almost Dry is a better album than Daytona.
You make some great points. Let me just give you this 3-song sequence though.
Mm-hmm.
Comeback Baby, Santeria, What Would Meek Do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, that's an excellent 3. It's an
and
excellent 3.
Santeria is just, I think it's my all-time favorite Pusha T song. Not taking into account clip stuff. So like, just having Santeria there is a big piece of it. But I mean, goddamn, It's Almost Dry. Yeah,
with It's Almost Dry, there's at least 2, 3. There's a couple 3-song sequence. You have Let the Smokers Shine the Coops, Dreaming of the Past, and Neck and Wrist, which excludes Brambleton, as you know, that could be in there as well. But then you also have Brambleton's fantastic, but then Neck and Wrist is fantastic, and that gets left out if you include Brambleton. That is 4 songs right there in that conversation. But you also have
more than half of Daytona.
Exactly. And then you also have Hear Me Clearly, Open Air, and I Pray For You. And I think I Pray For You definitely gets overlooked because of how incredible Open Air is. And it's the last song on the album, and just even sonically it allows it to breathe more. So there may be, less investment, but just hearing it as a standalone song, it's absolutely incredible. We could also go Diet Coke, Rock and Roll, and Call My Bluff. And so right there, I mean, there are 3-song sequences that I think could go toe to toe with any 3-song sequence on Daytona.
It's Almost Dry.
Yeah. And half the production was done by Pharrell too, which gives you a nice balance in between what Kanye was doing. It's Almost Dry is phenomenal.
So the only thing, and maybe this is nitpicking, maybe this is me rationalizing Daytona being on there, because it's largely produced by Pharrell, because it does feature Malice on the last track. Is this too close to one album per artist rule?
No.
Okay, fine. I just had to ask a question.
I was thinking about it in the back of my mind too.
All right, so we're going number 11, Pusha T, It's Almost Dry. We might catch some heat because Daytona is beloved, as it should be. It's an incredible album, but Pusha T's It's Almost Dry, I think, is, except for the clips, is like God Sort 'Em Out. It's probably the second best album in the last 5 years in terms of the hip hop space.
Definitely.
Call Me If You Get Losses in that conversation too, and it'll be there later. So we'll table that for a second. But among the best 3 albums of the last 5 years. Steve, let's go to best song here. To me, it's either Brambleton or Let the Smokers Shine the Coops. I think it's probably Let the Smokers Shine the Coops, and most of it has to do with that beat drop. When that kick comes in, it just hits so hard.
I can't not talk about this album and also talk about the cultural moment that happened that allowed for there to be the intro to Diet Coke with Fat Joe. Because that intro comes off the back of Fat Joe witnessing what the Locks did to Dipset in that Versus battle. Versus was so important for hip hop culture. I think still has the potential to be if they really tighten it up again and lock back in. But that was the best moment of the entire Versus experience, was Jadakiss going off in that moment. And then when Fat Joe was discussing it on his podcast the next day and was saying yesterday's price is not today's price when it came to Jadakiss and the Locks, that allowed for Diet Coke to have its proper introduction, which I thought was awesome. But shout out to 88 Keys, I think also had production on that track too. Whew, 88 Keys is incredible. But I think for the best song though, I think that between Brambleton, Neck and Wrist, Open Air, and Let the Smokers Shine the Coops, I might have to go with Neck and Wrist.
Yeah. All right. Biggest song. This one's tough for me, and it's largely because, like, at least lately, I feel like I'm not plugged into the culture. At least, like, the larger thing, because I don't go out anymore. I'm a dad. I don't listen to the radio. All I have is my own experience, and to me, it's clearly Brambleton and Let the Smoker Shine the Coop. But, like, those aren't even in the top 5 most streamed songs on this record, even though I think they are by far the 2 best. So
I would think it's definitely Diet Coke.
Scrape It Off is the most streamed on Spotify. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
it has Lil Uzi Vert.
It's because of Uzi. It's because of Uzi.
Yeah,
it's definitely because of Uzi, and you know, Spotify streams do have create a large say in the conversation, but Diet Coke, I think, is the biggest song. I think about, you know, the fact not only did he perform it on late night TV, but again, it goes back to that incredibly important and massive cultural moment that happened at Versus, that this song is fully connected to and can't be separated from. So yeah, I would say Diet Coke is probably the biggest song.
All right, so worst song, to me, it's probably Scrape It Off. Just not a huge Uzi fan.
Shout out to Philly. I gotta, you know.
Yeah, I know you got a rep.
But I think Hear Me Clearly is probably it for me. I love the beat. I love the fact that, you know, Nigo ended up with a feature on it. You know, shout out to Bape. But yeah, I would say that for me, I enjoy Scrape It Off. So I would probably say Hear Me Clearly could be removed, and it's still an elite album.
I will say, you know, I'm giving Lil Uzi Vert some hate right now, but he's got that one song with Isaiah Rashad, you know, because I always just have to bring up Isaiah Rashad when I have the opportunity to. But off of his record, From the Garden, it sheds fire from the house is burning. That's a great Lil Uzi Vert feature. So, you know, to give flowers where they're due.
Absolutely.
3-song sequence, for me, it is very clearly Brambleton into Let the Smokers Shine the Coops into
Dreaming of the Past with Ye.
The Past with Kanye. Yep. That's very clearly, and, you know, to me it's centered around Brambleton and Let the Smokers Shine the Coops. But there are multiple on this record that could be very much in the conversation for 3-song sequence.
I think for me, I would probably say it's Let the Smoker Shine the Coops, Dreaming of the Past, and Neck and Wrist. But I would love to say Diet Coke, Rock and Roll, and Call My Bluff. So I'm torn between those two. I think that when it all comes down to it, and if I really had to make a choice, I would lean toward Let the Smoker Shine the Coops, Dreaming of the Past, and Neck and Wrist. But Diet Coke, Rock and Roll, and Call My Bluff are crazy.
All right, so that brings us to the end of this episode 2. We went through 20 through 11. To recap, number 20 is Talib Kweli's Quality. Number 19, Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor. Number 18, ScHoolboy Q Blank Face LP. Number 17, Future DS2. Number 16, J. Cole 2014 Forest Hills Drive. Number 15, Mac Miller Swimmin'. Number 14, Nas Stillmatic. Number 13, Common B. Number 12, The Roots Game Theory. Number 11, Pusha T, It's Almost Dry. Steve, what does that leave us at for our top 10? What's in contention for the 10?
Our top 10 is looking like we have to make a final decision for 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying. We also have Kanye West, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid Mad City. Jay-Z's 444. Lil Wayne's The Carter 3. Outkast, Stankonia. Ghostface, Supreme Clientele. Clips, Let God Sort 'Em Out. Drake, Take Care. And Tyler's Call Me If You Get Lost.
How are you feeling right now at this stage in the process?
I feel better than we did after we sorted out that first 10.
Me too. I think we're in a good spot. I think that's the right top 10. And so from here, what we are going to do is we will have 10 more episodes in this season. It'll be a 12 episode season total. And each of those remaining 10 episodes will be dedicated to one album in its entirety. You know, the next episode will be whatever we decide as our number 10 album. We will give it an entire episode, and we will go on from there, finishing with number 1. That's about it for us. We will see you next time. Thank you very much for tuning in. Steve, good to see you as always.
Great to see you, bro. Have a good one, y'all.